Lift up your heart and praise. Lift up your hands and praise. Lift up your voice and praise.
And Moshe said, Hear, O Yisrael, Yahweh your Elohim, Yahweh is one, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. These words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way, when you lie down and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to everyone worshiping with us at home. We're going to have a message today called LaShon Hara, or the evil tongue. All right? Have you ever heard of this term before, LaShon Hara?
Yes.
Do you know what it means? All right. Literally, it means tongue the evil. All right. It means tongue the evil, or the evil tongue. The reason that I'm asking is because in Judaism, it's used to refer to the sin of gossip and backbiting. And if you ever get on the internet and look around and check this out, you're going to read this from Messianic Jewish groups. And if you ever check them out, you're going to get acquainted with this concept and with this term. And the word is LaShon Hara. All right? Now, of course, we do not ascribe to the tenets of Judaism, Messianic or otherwise. But how many of you believe that the practice of abstaining from gossip and slander is a good idea? All right, ding, ding, ding. All right. Leviticus 19:16 says, "Do not go slandering among your people. Do not stand against the blood of your neighbor. I am Yahweh." All right. Now, the word here for slandering comes from the Hebrew word rachil, and Strong's has it defined as slander, slanderer, talebearer, informer, gossip. Now, it's translated talebearer in the KJV in this verse, and in these next two that we're going to look at as well. But talebearer is a very descriptive word. Proverbs 11, we'll just turn there together and look at these. They're just one verse. Proverbs 11, we're going to be on page 737 in the 1998 ISR. Proverbs 11, verse 13. A slanderer is a revealer of secrets, but one with a trustworthy spirit conceals a matter. And then Proverbs 20, verse 19. He who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with him who speaks smoothly with his lips. Now, another Hebrew word translated as talebearer and slanderer is nirgan. And I've got the Brown Drivers Briggs definition here for some reason. Anyway, it says to murmur, whisper, backbite, slander, talebearer, backbiter. All right, now while we're in, and it's in here, Proverbs 18 in verse 8. The words of a slanderer are like delicacies, and they go down into the inner parts of the heart. All right. Now, this is not the same thing as talking about impropriety. All right. But YHWH talked both privately with his taught ones and publicly in front of others about impropriety and transgression against the Torah. Paul certainly made mention of transgression in his letters, even rebuking Peter to his face. Sometimes it's appropriate. But that's not what we're talking about here. This is talking about smearing people and causing dissension. All right? Now, while we're still in Proverbs, let's look at 26. Proverbs 26. And we're going to start reading in verse 20. For lack of wood, the fire goes out, and without a slanderer, strife ceases. As charcoal is to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man or woman to kindle strife. The words of a slanderer are as dainty morsels which go down into the inner parts of the heart. Burning lips with an evil heart are like earthenware covered with silver dross. He who hates pretends with his lips, and lays up deceit within him. Though he speaks kindly, do not believe him, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Hatred is covered by deceit. His evil is disclosed in the assembly. So, we agree that it is an evil which the tongue does, doesn't it? Don't we? All right? There's little disagreement that this would indeed constitute LaShon Hara and his untorah-like behavior. Now, what I would like to speak about today are some of the other little nasty practices that this small member of our body practices. All right? See, because the unguarded tongue causes a lot of trouble. Look with me to James chapter 3. Yaakov chapter 3. We're going to start reading in verse 1. We're going to be on page 1180. Chapter 3, verse 1. Do what? I beg your pardon. Thank you, Pat. 1175. 1175. James 3, verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, knowing that we shall receive greater judgment. For we all stumble in many matters. If anyone does not stumble in word, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle the entire body. Look, we put bits in the mouths of horses for them to obey us, and we turn their body. Look at the ships too. Although they are so big and are driven by strong winds, they are turned by a very small rudder wherever the pilot intends. So too the tongue is a little member, yet boasts greatly. See how a little fire kindles a great forest. And the tongue is a fire, the world of unrighteousness. Among our members the tongue is set, the one defiling the entire body and setting on fire the wheel of life. And it is set on fire by Gehenna. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and creature of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but no man is able to tame the tongue. It is unruly, evil, filled with deadly poison. With it we bless our Elohim and Father, and with it curse men who have been made in the likeness of Elohim. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brothers, this should not be so. Does the fountain send forth the sweet and bitter from the same opening? My brothers, is a fig tree able to bear olives, or a grapevine figs? So neither is a fountain able to make salt and sweet water. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by his good behavior his works and meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast against and lie against the truth. This is not the wisdom coming down from above, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where jealousy and self-seeking are, there is confusion and every foul deed. But the wisdom from above is first clean and peaceable, gentle, ready to obey, filled with compassion and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Okay? So, we see that from this one example alone from the Scripture that the tongue boasts greatly. It kindles fire, as we read in Proverbs. It is unruly, evil, filled with deadly poison. It curses, brings forth bitterness, lies, and does the work of a jealous and self-seeking heart. The tongue, brothers and sisters, is trouble. However, before we continue, I have a little confession to make. No, I have a hidden agenda. Tucked away underneath much of this message about the tongue and all the trouble that it causes is a hidden agenda of saving the children. All right? Now, though this message is indeed about the evil tongue, I think that much attention needs to be paid to how this very thing affects our children and grandchildren, or any little ones in our lives. Right? And I decided to fess up early on, lest I be found out later on later on in the message. Now, ask yourself, how much of an impact do you suppose these words will have on a child as they sponge-like watch their parent pull out a pack of cigarettes, tap out one of those cigarettes, roll it between their fingers, stick that thing in their mouth, flick that lighter and touch it 2 or 3 times, then there, and take a big old deep draw. Hold it for a minute and let it out. Maybe blow 2 or 3 of those really cool smoke rings. All right? Then turn to the child and say, I don't ever want to see you with a cigarette in your mouth. Do you hear me? These things are bad for you. They'll give you cancer. I think that the words will have much less of an impact on the action, or less than the action, I mean. All right? Do you think that you might see that kid with a cigarette in his own mouth one of these days? You might. I think that you might. Why won't that child obey the parent? It's because the parent is teaching much more loudly with the tongue of their actions than with the tongue of their mouth. All right? Luke 17:2, it's just one verse, says, it would be better for him if a millstone is put around his neck and that he were thrown into the sea than that he should cause one of these little ones to stumble. See, actions speak louder than words. Amen? All right. But wait a minute, Stan. I thought you said this message was about tongue. And then all of a sudden you started talking about actions speak louder than words. You're not making any sense here. What gives? Well, words can be very powerful things. They can. There are things that you've heard in your life that have impressed you immensely. People have given great speeches that moved entire nations. All right? Words can be very powerful things. But what do you suppose happens when you put them both together, actions and words? You can get something really powerful. Amen? When you demonstrate for the child how you act with your words, you get a child with an action-driven tongue. Right? And unless you have acted with your own tongue in a way that demonstrates love and peace and truth and meekness and cleanliness and all righteousness, well, that child will have a tongue that's not one with Yahweh's purpose. Right? Look at Proverbs chapter 6. We spend a lot of time in Proverbs today, aren't we? It's a good place. Mishlei, chapter 6. We're going to start reading in verse 16, page 732. Proverbs 6:16. These 6 matters Yahweh hates, and 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying, what's that word? Tongue, and hands shedding innocent blood, a heart devising wicked schemes, feet quick to run to evil, a false witness breathing out lies, and one who causes strife among brothers. You see, there's more to this picture than what I or you say and do. What we say and do impacts others, and what we say and do certainly influences our seed, our children. All right? If we say to our children, the Torah says do not lie. All right? Leviticus 19:11 says do not steal, do not lie, and do not deceive one another. All right? What do you suppose that child learns when the phone rings and the answering parent says, it's for you? And the parent for whom the call was for says, tell him I'm not here. All right? And then the answering parent says, well, he's not here. Can he call you back? What lesson do you suppose the child learned? The word Torah means instruction. All right? So what Torah did the child receive? Well, he learns by example from 2 witnesses that it's perfectly acceptable to lie. He also learned that his parents really don't do what that book says. So he learns that he doesn't have to either. Man, it's getting deep. And it didn't take long to teach it or learn it, did it? No, it didn't. All right. The caller could simply have been told, he's going to need to call you back later. You know? This behavior will follow that child into many opportunities. All right. Matthew 15. Matthew 15. I'm going to start reading in verse 17. 9:35. Matthew 15:17. Do you not understand whatever enters into the mouth goes into the stomach and is cast out into the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart, and these defile the man. For out of the heart comes forth wicked reasonings, murders, adulteries, whorings, thefts, false witnessings. Look at that next word. Slanders. These defile the man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile the man. You see, the evil tongue can destroy our children. All right? How about speaking harshly or hurtfully or shamefully or judgmentally? Have you ever seen a person with all that hands on their hip and the head wagging around and just verbally rip somebody else to shreds? You ever seen that? Yeah. Or even quietly deliver a well-placed hurt into the heart of the hearer. All right? Only to justify their nastiness with a phrase like, hey, I'm just being honest, okay? You know? This is what's commonly called covering up a bad motive with a good motive. The person who is, quote, being honest is usually really only being mean. They're not concerned with honesty at all, and Yahweh knows that. All right, what has really happened is that they have sourness in their heart. Sourness that has welled up into their mouth. And if they don't get it under control, what they'll do is they'll do it under the guise of being honest. Somehow it becomes acceptable in their minds to regurgitate all that sourness all over the person for whom they've decided to direct their bitterness. All right? Sometimes instead of being honest, we will justify it, or the person will give themselves permission by saying, hey, I'm just telling you what I think. As if just because I think it means that somehow it makes me obligated to spew it out of my mouth. You ever seen that? Sure you have. And it hurts the other person's feeling. It's my duty. It's my duty. It came in my mind, therefore it must come out my mouth. All right? I have some bad news for you in the name of honesty. Have you ever, in the name of truth, balled up your tongue and punched somebody right in the stomach of their heart? Or have you ever been on the receiving end of such a blow? Right? Have you ever been an innocent bystander who simply witnessed the attack? Sure. It's not only the strikee who is harmed. Frequently the striker does more harm to their own reputation than their honesty did to the one that they felt like needed a little correcting. Yeah. And in addition to that, Yahweh's watching. Proverbs 15. Proverbs 15. Verse 1. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up displeasure. The tongue of the wise makes knowledge good, but the mouth of fools pours out foolishness. The eyes of Yahweh are in every place, watching the evil and the good. A healing tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it crushes the spirit. I know this gentleman who has a reputation for telling them what he thinks. Right? As a matter of fact, he's sort of famous for telling them what he thinks, because everywhere he goes, he has an opinion about what's wrong with the way it's being done and the way it ought to be done. You know anybody like that? Management is aware of this practice as well. And do you know why? Well, to put it in the words of this fellow himself, he says, I just tell them what I think, and the truth hurts. But guess who it hurts the most? Well, let's see. He's one of these fellas that wants to be upwardly mobile. Right? He's a smart guy. He has a 2-year degree. He also has a smart mouth. Right? And his tendency to make sure that he lets you know what's on his mind keeps him in the mind of those who would promote him. But because he's so abrasive and condescending with his mouth, which reflects his heart, people don't want him in their work group. And he doesn't get promoted like he could. All right? He is, of course, not only like this with people at work, but everywhere he goes. He's like that with people at Little League and at football games. You know, I just tell them what I think, and the truth hurts. One of the biggest problems is that he's under the false impression that the mere fact that an idea popped into his brain means that it's the truth. All right? And that's called self-righteousness. All right? I think, therefore, I'm right. All right? And the rest of you are wrong. But you can count your blessings, because I'm going to intimidate you into seeing things my way. All right? And guess who is likely to grow up with the same reputation? His kids. His kids. They'll likely grow up being the same kind of people that everyone hates to see coming. All right? So who does he hurt? Well, of course he hurts the feelings of the poor mentally challenged people in his sphere of influence, the ones he so generously slaps with the truth of his imagination. But he hurts himself, his wife, and his children, who will grow up and begin a legacy of arrogance and self-righteousness all their own. Proverbs 16:24 says, pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweet to the being and healing to the bones. Turn with me to Ephesians chapter 5. We're going to start reading in verse 1, and we'll be on page 1135. Ephesians 5, verse 1. Become then imitators of Elohim as beloved children, and walk in love as Messiah also has loved us and gave himself for us, a gift, an offering to Elohim for a sweet-smelling fragrance. But whoring and all uncleanliness or greed of gain, let it not even be named among you, as is proper among set-apart ones. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which are not fitting, but rather thanksgiving. And then one verse, you don't have to turn here, Colossians 3:8. But now also put off all these, displeasure, wrath, evil, blasphemy, filthy talk from your mouth. All right. It's interesting to note that in the book of Mark, concerning the account where Yahshua discussed the things which come out of the man that make him unclean, it also mentions indecency. Let's take a look at that real quick. Mark chapter 7. Mark 7, verse 20, page 963. Mark 7:20. And he said, what comes out of a man, that defiles a man. For From within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil reasonings, adulteries, whorings, murders, thefts, greedy desires, wickedness, deceit, indecency, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. Once while I was working, I watched this one man while he's listening to another fellow. In his normal manner of conversation, the other fellow, he spewed forth from his mouth a constant flow of all sorts of four-letter words and other vulgarities and dirty jokes, etc., and it just was nonstop. Just goes on and on and on. And he went on for a while one day while the first man was working, and he looked up from his work and asked, "Is that the same mouth that you kiss your children with?" He simply turned around and he went back to doing his job. Now, I don't know how much of an impact this made on the second fella, but it made a tremendous impact on me. I wondered, would the second gentleman approve of others speaking that way in front of his own children? I knew that I would not approve of it. Made me reevaluate my own speech. I'm remembering it to this day. I was still in my 20s when I saw that. I started to reevaluate my own speech. When I look at my own children, and nowadays particularly my grandchildren, I want them to grow up and be as pure and undefiled as possible. Amen? Is that the kind of mouth that I would want to kiss my children with? But one day I got to pondering this thought, and another question of even greater profundity entered my mind. The children are one thing, but is that the same mouth that with which you would kiss your Savior? Deuteronomy 23. That's a great question. Amen. Deuteronomy 23. We're going to look at start in verse 12, page 209. Deuteronomy 23, verse 12. "And you shall have a place outside the camp where you shall go out, and you shall have a sharp implement among your equipment. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it, and turn and cover your excrement. For Yahweh your Elohim walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore your camp shall be set apart, so that he does not see unclean matter among you, and shall turn away from you." Now here's a good question. We all know several cuss words for excrement, right? All right? If Yahweh doesn't want to see it, what makes us think that he's going to be any more excited about having it fill the air and going into his hearing when we speak? Just something to think about. Zephaniah 3:9, just one verse. "For then I shall turn unto the peoples a clean lip, so that they call on the name of Yahweh to serve him with one shoulder." Now, how are we going to have a clean lip when our tongue keeps shoveling all of that trash across them? All right? The word of Yahweh is what we should have in our hearts and in our mouths. All right? Just one verse here. Deuteronomy 30:14 says, "For the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it." And what are we supposed to be doing with the word? Deuteronomy 6:7 says, "And you shall impress them upon your children." All right? Little thing I've got written down here. If children live with criticism, they learn to condemn. If children live with hostility, they learn to fight. If children live with fear, they learn to be apprehensive. If children live with pity, they learn to feel sorry for themselves. If children live with ridicule, they learn to be shy. If children live with jealousy, they learn to feel envy. If children live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. If children live with encouragement, they learn confidence. If children live with tolerance, they learn patience. If children live with praise, they learn appreciation. If children live with acceptance, they learn love. If children live with approval, they learn to like themselves. It's important that you like yourself, especially if you're going to love your neighbor as yourself. All right? If children live with recognition, they learn that it's good to have a goal. If children live with sharing, they learn generosity. If children live with honesty, they learn truthfulness. If children live with fairness, they learn justice. If children live with kindness and consideration, they learn respect. If children live with security, they learn to have faith in themselves and in those about them. And if children live with friendliness, they learn the world is a nice place which to live. All right? So, we see that there's much more that can be going, there's much more to an evil tongue that one can do besides just gossip. Amen? All right? And in addition to those things, one of them being to defile the minds of our children. So let us do righteously as the proverb says. All right? Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he's old, he turns not away from it. Let's look at Proverbs 16. Proverbs 16, verse 23 is where we're going to start. 742. Verse 23. The heart of the wise gives discretion to his mouth, and he increases learning to his lips. Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweet to the being and healing to the bones. Okay, so we're going to talk about disrespecting and arguing with parents. All right. Now, I'm talking to us older children here. Exodus 20:12 says, respect your father and your mother so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. And Exodus 21:17 says, and he who curses his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. Of course, probably all of us at one time or another have disrespected our parents, especially while growing up as teenagers. All right. Have we ever done this, though, in the privacy of our homes, in the presence of our little ones? What do you suppose that this teaches our children about how they should respect us as parents? Because this will backfire. And grandparents, do we ever tell our children that their parents don't know what they're talking about? Okay, so this goes both ways. Do we as parents ever sit around in our house in the presence of our little ones and talk disrespectfully about our own parents? Okay, because that's going to teach them it's okay to disrespect your parents. And so I want to get to the grandparents now and ask, do you ever say, you don't have to listen to your parents, they don't know what they're talking about? You see, this is LaShon Hara. We just read the scripture that says, whoever curses his father or his mother. We also read the one about a millstone being tied around their neck causes one of these little ones to stumble. All right, so grandparents need to be careful too, me being one of them. All right. When grandparents say, you don't have to listen to your parents, they don't know what they're talking about. This says, from a person that the children love and respect, that you have it on good authority that you don't have to respect your parents. That's not good. That's not good. What about what we say with our tongue on one hand, that you do not commit adultery, but say with our tongues, yes, when our daughters want to dress provocatively in a way that makes men imagine their nakedness like the other worldly girls. Girls whose parents don't follow Yahweh. Or when we say with our tongues, yes, when our sons want to watch movies or video games with hot babes, and sex is part of the flavoring. You see, this too is LaShon Hara, and it should not be. All right? What about when we come up in our own minds with all kinds of humanistic reasons for breaking Torah? All right? This teaches the children that we really don't believe what's in this book. All right? All right, so what about this one? Bragging versus humility. I'd like to look at these 7 things again that Yahweh hates and pay close attention to what member of the body causes more of the abomination than any other. All right, let's go back to Proverbs 6, starting in verse 16. Proverbs 6:16. These 6 matters Yahweh hates. That means He doesn't like it very much, amen? And 7 are an abomination to Him. Okay. Number 1, a proud look. All right. The word look actually means eyes here in Hebrew. All right. Many translations translate it as a haughty look. All right. So Yahweh hates that. A proud look or a haughty eye. Next, a lying, what's that word? Tongue. And hands shedding innocent blood. A heart devising wicked schemes. Feet quick to run to evil. A false witness breathing out lies. That's a tongue. And one who causes strife among brothers. That's the tongue. Okay? So there's the tongue gets mentioned here more than anything else. Now, YHWH said in Luke 6, verse 45, a good man brings forth what is good out of the good treasure of his heart, and the wicked man brings forth what is wicked out of the wicked treasure of his heart. For out of the overflow of the heart, his mouth speaks. Okay? So we see that even when it comes to the heart, there's a connection between the heart and the tongue. All right? The evil tongue rears its ugly head many, many times. So what are we to do? What are we to do with this unruly thing? Well, LaShon HaTov. See? You never hear anyone talk about that, do you? LaShon HaTov. What is that? That's the good tongue. The good man brings forth what is good out of the good treasures of his heart, and the wicked man brings forth what is wicked out of the wicked treasures of his heart. For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So guess what? If we've got a good heart, we're going to have LaShon HaTov. All right? What if we were to concentrate on a clean heart and make that a priority in our lives? Psalm 51:10 says, create in me a clean heart, O Elohim, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. And YHWH said in Matthew 5:8, it's Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the clean in heart, because they shall see Elohim. All right? Since it's what the man's heart that proceeds forth from his mouth, perhaps we ought to work on that. Amen? All right. Then, when we put words together with actions, our children would be blessed by LaShon HaTov, the good tongue. All right? And would be raised up truly in a way that they should go. All right? So let's put away LaShon Hara and put on LaShon HaTov, the good tongue. Yevrokeka Yahweh ba'ishmareka ya'er Yahweh panavaleka bikuneka yasa Yahweh panavaleka bi'asem lakash shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you His complete contentment.